Good morning.
Good morning.
Nice to have a nice full Zendo. And hi to everyone online as well. It's great to be here. So I came across a teaching of the Buddha, in his own words, that relates to something that's become one of my favorite themes lately, and I'd like to share it with you. And the theme is practice related. It's about how to conduct our practice and how to stick with it when things get hard, or maybe when we just can't seem to bring the same zeal to our practice that we used to bring. So this talk is aimed at more experienced practitioners, but I'm pretty sure it'll be helpful to people who are new as well. It may encourage you to think of your practice as a long-term thing and let you know that it's important that you keep it fresh continuously because we live in a continuous present, just this. But how we show up for that continuous present changes over time, and that's the irony, that's the paradox. It's just now. But we can become burdened over time with our own practice history. Expectations arise, ideas, attachments, and we can forget that it's just now. And how do we remember that it's just now? That's my subject today. So the teaching that I came across is a selection from a book called The Middle-Length Discourses of the Buddha, and it's called The Shorter Discourse on the Mass of Suffering, or in Pali, the Culadukkhakkhanda Sutta. So, the Shorter Discourse on the Mass of Suffering. So this little sutra is about how to end suffering, which is what our practice is about. And it's good to go back to the Buddha's original words, and I'm going to follow the text pretty closely for a little bit. It begins, "Thus have I heard." And when we hear that, we know that this is Ananda speaking, the Buddha's faithful attendant who could remember and repeat everything that the Buddha ever said. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living in the Shakyan country at Kapilavatthu in Nigroda's park. So the Buddha wandered teaching all over the place, but at this time he happens to be back in his home country, the Shakyan country, in a park that had been provided by this person, Nigroda. Then Mahanama the Shakyan went to the Blessed One, and after paying homage to him, he sat down at one side and said, "Venerable Sir, I have long understood the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One thus. Greed is an imperfection that defiles the mind. Hate is an imperfection that defiles the mind. Delusion is an imperfection that defiles the mind." He's naming the three poisons here: greed, anger, and self-delusion. "Yet while I understand the Dhamma taught by the Blessed One thus, at times states of greed, hate, and delusion invade my mind and remain. I have wondered, Venerable Sir, what state is still unabandoned by me internally, owing to which at times these states of greed, hate, and delusion invade my mind and remain?" So he's saying, I understand that you're teaching that we need to remove greed, anger, and self-delusion, and I really understand this, but these things keep coming back to me, and I don't know what to do about this. And this intrigued me when I read this. It reminds me a little bit of Dokusan. I do a lot of Dokusans, one-on-one meetings with people, and often people will say things like this. My practice was going so well in the beginning, and I've hit this really hard patch here. And what am I going to do? And I think it's important to address this because many of us, we do practice over many years, and sometimes we hit a hard patch. So Mahanama, the Shakyan, is an experienced practitioner. He's been at it a while. He had long ago attained the fruit of the once returner, which only weakens greed, hate, and delusion, but not does not eradicate them. So he probably had some kind of an experience. He had been meditating for years, and he had some kind of an experience where maybe he completely let go of himself. Maybe he was just ecstatic and ego-free, but probably the ego came back, and this was hard for him. He's disappointed. He's disappointed because he thought it was all gone for good, and now he's back to being the same old practitioner with all of these problems. So he said, yeah, I've long understood this, and yet greed, hate, and delusion still arise. What state is still unabandoned by me? What is it in me that I've got to do something about, and how do I do it? So this is something I think familiar to a lot of us, and I don't want to reduce meditation experience to something pat or predictable, but sometimes there are patterns. People begin meditating, and at first it's just really hard. It's like those first few trips to the gym where your muscles just don't want to do it. But then it gets easier, you get used to it, and maybe it makes you really happy. And maybe you even get to the point where it's kind of ecstatic. First these small rewards come, and then it's like, yes, this is really wonderful. And then at some point you may reach this point where it's not so ecstatic. Maybe months or years into your practice, you think you're there. You thought you were there, as if there's a place to be, and then you realize you're not, and disappointment arises. And this is Mahanama. So he had this mistaken notion that all of this stuff should be should have been eradicated. So we might get to the point where we feel like we're not making any progress, and we're at a kind of plateau. We get frustrated. It's an important stage, and it can be a really fertile, a really good stage if we handle it right. So sometimes when people reach this stage, they cut back on their practice. Some abandon their practice. Some people leave Zen Center. And some people see it through, and they say, oh yeah, I'm reminded. This practice is not about fulfilling my desires. Somehow I got back to the point where I thought, this is about my desires being fulfilled, about the practice making me happy again. But this practice is about abandoning my desires. So when I think, well, I'm at a plateau and I don't like it, that's just more desire. So another thing that can happen is a kind of a starkness can come in. Once we really open up, we start to sort of see our own inadequacies kind of starkly, which can be painful. Tim, my teacher, Tim Burkett, talked about this at one point. He said after a big awakening experience, all he did was notice how much he was screwing up all the time. And he went to his teacher, Suzuki, and Suzuki said, yeah, it was like that for me too. And I've experienced it as well. The more aware you become of things, the more you see the relentlessness of your desiring mind and its insistence, and you can get kind of tired of it. So I've given this condition a grand name, which is the malaise of the long-term practitioner. And malaise, maybe it's specific, maybe we know what's wrong, but malaise is defined as a general feeling of discomfort, illness, or uneasiness whose exact cause is difficult to identify. But having given it this grand name, I don't want to overstate it. It's not inevitable, but sometimes it happens to people. So, what does the Buddha say? What is his solution? He says, there's always a lot of repetition with these things. You just have to go with it. Mahanama, there is still a state unabandoned by you internally, owing to which at times states of greed, hate, and delusion invade your mind and remain. For were that state already abandoned by you internally, you would not be living the home life, you would not be enjoying sensual pleasures. So the Buddha is saying it's clear there's a problem because you're still stuck in sensual pleasures. And when we hear that, sensual pleasures, we think sex, drugs, rock and roll, food, various kinds of highs and things like that. But it's much more than that too. It's grasping mind. It's the mind's relentless need to always take things in and be entertained and hold things. It's like scrolling mind. We get on there and we scroll, and it's like, just one more. I'm just going to read one more, just one more. And we keep going. And it's addictive. It's addictive. So he's saying, you're still there, that's why you're suffering. And he also says, if you weren't this way, you would not be living the home life, which is kind of troubling. He's equating sensual pleasures with householder status, which sounds like, there's something wrong with living at home. But this doesn't really apply to us generally, because most of us are living a lay life out in the world, which is fine. But then the Buddha goes on, even though a noble disciple has seen clearly how sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering, and much despair, and how great is the danger in them, as long as he still does not attain to the rapture and pleasure that are apart from sensual pleasures, apart from unwholesome states, or to something more peaceful than that, he may still be attracted to sensual pleasures. So that's your problem, Mahanama. You have not fully seen what it's like to be beyond that world of sensual pleasure, beyond that scrolling mentality. You have not so fully immersed yourself in that you can see it with its own eyes rather than the eyes of desire. So this is his solution. You must see the rapture and pleasure that are apart from sensual pleasures, or something more peaceful than that. He's saying you haven't fully experienced the joy that comes with this way of being that does not involve sensual pleasures. It's a very subtle thing, and you're not there yet. You're still scrolling. You're so caught up in scrolling that you can't imagine maybe just going outdoors and sitting under a tree and just being there with nothing to do and not needing to do anything. But furthermore, it's not just about abandoning sensual pleasures, which have their place. It's about something more peaceful than that. So it's a subtle way of being in the moment, in such a way that past and future are also present. It's full awareness, a deep sense of peace that's more long-lasting and deeper than any sense of rapture. So it's kind of a tipping point. The Dharma draws you in so much that you don't want to go back. So it's not a state of fighting your urges, it's a state of being so peaceful that these urges don't arise. So how does the Buddha help Mahanama to see this way of being? He says, before my enlightenment, while I was still only an unenlightened bodhisattva, I too clearly saw, as it actually is with proper wisdom, how sensual pleasures provide little gratification, much suffering, and much despair. So I was like that too, and I overcame this. I recognized that I was no longer attracted to sensual pleasures. So I overcame this, and you can too. And then he launches into a little story. Now, Mahanama, on one occasion, I was living at Rajagaha on the mountain Vulture Peak. So he was at a distance from home. He was at this training and retreat center, which was outdoors. On that occasion, a number of Naganthas living on the black rock on the slopes of Isigili, practicing continuous standing, rejecting seats, and were experiencing painful, racking, piercing feelings due to exertion. So this was a group of Jains, a separate sect, not Buddhists, who are really into nonviolence, non-attachment, and into asceticism, into extreme asceticism. They're continuously standing. They never sit down. They're experiencing painful, racking, piercing feelings due to exertion. And the Buddha had done all of this stuff. He had tried all this stuff. He had practiced extreme asceticism, rejecting food and becoming tremendously thin, and doing things like never sitting, but always standing. and he had found the middle path where you reject asceticism. So he's talking to Mahanama about asceticism here to introduce the middle path. And it makes sense that Mahanama would be drawn to asceticism as a solution for malaise. If your practice is not going well, you may double down. You think, I just have to be more disciplined, I just have to work harder, I just have to be a little meaner to myself. And often that doesn't work. So the Buddha talked to this group of Jains, these Naganthas. He said, friends, why do you practice continuous standing, rejecting seats and experience? And they replied that their leader, who is omniscient and all-seeing and claims to have complete knowledge and vision, has said, Naganthas, you have done evil actions in the past. You need to exhaust them now with the performance of piercing austerities. So this is another kind of idea that we've done things bad, and as kind of a penance, we need to sort of harm ourselves in order to cleanse ourselves of evil karma. This is not very helpful. And the Buddha is going to make that clear. So the Buddha, and I'm going to kind of stop reading now because it gets kind of murky, but the Buddha launches into a philosophical refutation of this idea that austerity eases the effects of bad karma. He says, here's where you're wrong, it can't do that, and you need to be aware of how things can be so that it will be easier for you to reject the scrolling. So like a fish who can't imagine land, you cannot imagine the true deep pleasure of simply sitting, which is the pleasure not of desire fulfilled, but the pleasure of absence of desire. And I think of it like this, like one who is sleeping and can't imagine that it would feel good to wake up, or like one who wants to stay up late and can't imagine that it would feel good to sleep. The Buddha is saying, please accept that there is a pleasure of non-attachment which is different from sensual pleasure. It's more deep and real. And you can find this not through asceticism, but through welcoming a calm and quiet state, through calming and quieting and resting the mind. The Buddha is reminding Mahanama of joy, of the joy of practice. He's saying, relax, Mahanama. You are wanting something and it's wearing you out. You're wanting an end to your afflictive emotions. Let it be as it is. Greed, anger, and self-delusion exist. Stop fighting. Drop your expectations. You learned to do that when your practice was new. You dropped your expectations, and that's why you were feeling good. Now the expectations have come back in, and you ask, why am I not getting anywhere? And I'm here to remind you that there's nowhere to go, says the Buddha. So I will read just one more sentence. That is what the Blessed One said. Mahanama the Shakyan was satisfied and delighted in the Blessed One's words. So there's a happy ending here. And he probably went out of there feeling renewed, and he probably got back to his practice. Oh, I just do it. Oh, I don't think about what I need or how it should be. I just do it. This has nothing to do with how it should be. This only has to do with how it is. So that's the story, but I'd like to make just a few more comments about this. About this malaise. If you're a long-term practitioner, you may be feeling that it's no longer working, or it should be working faster. It's no longer pleasurable. I'm no longer ecstatic. I'm seeing the starkness of my ego. Remember the middle path. Don't double down. Open yourself to the joy of practice. And maybe vary your practice. There are many ways to vary your practice. Maybe, usually we think, well, more sitting is the answer, and usually it is. I want to be clear about that. But sometimes maybe less sitting. Maybe if you're just getting all sort of in your head about sitting, maybe you do less sitting. Maybe you do more walking meditation. Maybe you walk on the path continuously for a long time. Maybe you walk at home. Maybe you walk around the lake. Or maybe you do more mindful work. Maybe you shake up your sitting practice. Maybe you sit in a new place or at a new time. If you're sitting at home all the time, maybe you come here to Zen Center. Maybe you join us early in the morning or in the evening for sitting here. Maybe you engage in ritual if you ordinarily don't. Maybe you're kind of suspicious of ritual. It doesn't feel right to you. Maybe you give it a try. You know, there really is something there. Maybe you give that a try, a new approach. And hold the question each day of what is the appropriate practice today. It may not be the same as yesterday. Open yourself up. Take that risk. Try things that are new. And remember that turning point, that shift. How can you encourage that shift from being in the scrolling to being in the Dharma? That is an incredible shift. So I'm going to quote Tim again, or actually more paraphrase him, from a talk he gave in 2017. I took notes. He identified 3 kinds of shifts that can help us. The first shift is from the attitude of, what can I get from Zazen, to the attitude of, what can I learn about myself? An example of what can I learn about myself, instead of asking, how can I fulfill this need, ask, what is this need? That's a huge shift. Sit with it. Spend time with it. Ask it what it wants. What is this need? What is this need? And then go further. Who is it that has this need? Who is it that has all of these needs? And simply hold that question with great curiosity. The second shift is from what can I learn about myself to what can I learn about my relationships with others? So again, you bring that same curiosity, but this time it leads you to more compassion. So shift to, I am doing this practice for others. That is a great cure for malaise. And you can do this. Simply do your practice for all beings. You can shake up your practice. You can shake up your practice by serving the community more. You can look around and see what needs to be done here at MZMC and do it. Or you can serve your larger community more. You can look around in your neighborhood or in your world and ask, what needs to be done? The third shift, shifting to the possibility of waking up to a world without boundaries. That is a big one. That is a very big shift. Waking up to a world without boundaries. This is an end to all of the distinctions that we like to make, as in meditation is working or it's not working, or I'm asleep or I'm awake, or I'm enlightened or I'm not enlightened, or I feel good or I feel bad. Wouldn't it be great to abandon those distinctions and simply do life with no analysis and no need? With no attainment, for there is nothing to attain, and that's more of a Zen take on this matter. Less about transcending and more about giving up the need to transcend. There are no levels of accomplishment. It is simply this all the time, the whole deal, including delusion. And the difference is not clinging. So you can see and understand the possibility of a world without boundaries, but also you can open yourself to it. You can believe that this can happen to you. And that's basically a summary of what Tim had to say. As for me, it took me a long time to get to that belief myself. I've shared a lot over the years about my own spiritual history, and I won't get into that again this morning. I'll just say that, looking back, I think maybe the most important event in my spiritual history was when I accepted the possibility that this great deepening of practice could happen to me in my lifetime. This possibility of waking up to a world without boundaries, I accepted that that could occur. Because for years, I did not believe it could occur. I didn't think it could possibly happen to me. I thought that I wasn't good enough to do it. I thought that my karma was too bad, that it would prevent me from doing it. Somehow, I was excluded from the Buddha's love. Everybody else, but not me. Can't be me. No, too much going on in here. So I was not Buddha, that I was separate somehow from Buddha. Now, how could that be? That's ridiculous. Would I ever tell a friend of mine, you're separate from Buddha? So why would I say that to myself? But I did come to this belief, and that had to do with a lot of practice and coming here, and a lot of support, and a lot of love, and a lot of seeing examples of people who were opening their hearts. So I realized that possibility was not closed to me. And if you have not come to this belief, I want to tell you that you can, and ask you to please, please, please keep your heart open to this possibility. And, Rohatsu is coming. It's a retreat of up to 7 days. It's during the first week of December. And when I talk about retreats these days, I really try to minimize expectations, because expectations can really get in the way of being in the here and now. So I'm like, don't expect too much, don't look for enlightenment. But also, on the other hand, I don't want to foreclose that possibility either. I mean, there really is that possibility of magic. There really is that possibility that if you show up at Rohatsu this year and you really give yourself to it, that something will occur that opens you up to possibilities in a way you've never seen before. This can really happen, and we need to keep open to it. So I'd like to end with a quote that I really like. This quote is often attributed incorrectly to someone else, but it's actually by Marianne Williamson. And here's the quote. Maybe you've heard this. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Okay, she writes about God. We can think Buddha. It's the same thing in this instance. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So, please take that to heart. Please be open. And if it seems impossible, I'll tell you, it is remarkable how things can turn, how things can change, and how things can come in your life that you never expected and never thought possible. So that's my talk. And I would love to hear from some of you, if anyone would like to say something, either here in the Zendo or folks online. Yes?
I have a question about giving up essential experience or pleasures. I mean, I'm having a hard time with that because, like, say, for example, enjoying swimming in a lake to me is essential pleasure. So what would be bad about that?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's a very good question. Yeah, sensual pleasures in themselves are not a bad thing. I mean, and they make life wonderful. Swimming in the lake or eating a good meal, all of these things we enjoy. It's the attachment that makes the difference. It's the attachment to sensual pleasures. It's the feeling that sensual pleasures can sort of solve all of our problems, or that if we get more and more of them, we'll be okay. It's attributing more to the sensual pleasure that it can really do. You know, swimming in the lake can make us feel good while we're swimming in the lake, but that doesn't mean that if we devote our lives to sort of that same kind of good feeling all the time, that that's going to make us happy. There's a limited amount that sensual pleasures can do for us. It's not the only thing in our lives. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, yes.
I wanted to ask about, like, why do you think that we're so much harsher on ourselves than everyone else, and why is it that we can see the good in someone else so much easier than we can in ourselves? And like, one of the thoughts that I had is that with ourselves, we see everything that's going on behind the scenes, like how the sausage is made, the way that our brain is working, that sort of thing. But I just wanted to hear, you know, like, what are your thoughts reflecting back on that?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, what you just said I think is correct. You know, there's this phrase like we compare our insides to everybody else's outsides. We see everyone and what they're presenting to the world, and it looks pretty good to us, and we know that we've got all this stuff going on in here, and we think, well, that's not going on in everyone else. Look at it, look at them, look how calm and wonderful and smart they all are, and I've got this horrible stuff going on. So it's kind of this lack of perspective. I think also we can be hard on ourselves because sometimes we may get messages from external sources, you know, that we're not good enough. These things can happen in childhood and that kind of thing. And I think maybe we get this understanding early on that if we're really hard on ourselves, that gets results. If we're really hard on ourselves, we say to ourselves, you know, Ted, you're an idiot and you're totally inadequate, and so you have got to do this thing in order to, you know, be adequate like everybody else. So you force yourself to work hard and accomplish something, and it does get results. In the long term, it's terrible. It doesn't help at all. But I think we learn early on that there's a short-term benefit that comes from being hard on ourselves. Does that make sense?
It does, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
So you were talking about if you don't have, if you're like, okay, let's not focus on having our needs and let's not focus on our desires, or just like everything is just about being with what is and that's all. What if I'm like on my phone and I'm scrolling and I'm grasping and I'm like, I kind of wake up from the trance temporary and I'm like, oh shoot, I have a lot of unmet needs and this isn't what I desire. Should I just be like, but this is okay because this is what is, and I'm just going to do this. And this is just life forever now.
Yeah. That's a really good question. Like, what is the difference between just saying, yeah, scrolling's okay, it is what it is, and saying it is what it is, but I don't want to scroll? What is the difference there? There's a little bit of a detachment there. There's maybe a kind of a shift there, which is if you're caught in the scrolling, you're not detached, you're not seeing it for what it is totally sweeping you away. But if a little part of your brain is sort of watching and saying, oh, look what's going on here, then you can kind of step back from it and see like, oh, that's not good for me. I need to put that down for a little while. So it can look a lot the same, but really it's that ability to see what we're actually doing, to see the level of attachment there.
But if I was to see that and then I'm like, yeah, but I shouldn't need anything or desire anything different than this. So the fact that I don't feel good and I desire to feel better, this is not making me feel good, I shouldn't listen to that. I should just,
Right.
not desire anything different than what is.
Yeah, when I talk about not needing and not desiring things, that I'm kind of using that in a certain way to talk about sort of our deep relation to the world, about not needing a certain outcome, not expecting things, not trying to force things, but accepting the reality of what is. That doesn't mean that we don't try to change things and we accept everything that's bad. In fact, we do everything we can to make things better. That's the Bodhisattva ideal, that's right action, that's something we do all of the time. So it's kind of like, yes, we have to accept the reality of how things are. But once we accept that reality of how things are, then we do the right thing to make that reality better.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, Ruzan.
I can relate. I was there, yeah. So, just a question. So thank you for calling out the difference between having sensual desires versus the attachment to those desires. That's always a good practice, reminder for me. How about, so in that context of her comments, how would you characterize, because it's an interesting place for us to be, where we talk a lot about the thusness and things as it is of the moment, and yet we make efforts. So I've heard it called by a teacher, I've heard it called aspirations. So how would you characterize aspiration to work towards something versus clinging to that? I mean, you can cling to that too, I would assume, right? That would be, there's an opportunity for unhealthy clinging. Maybe say a little bit, help me out with, how does aspiration fit into our clinging?
Yeah. Well, the Bodhisattva does Bodhisattva work no matter what the outcome is. Puts forth the same effort no matter what the outcome is. If it's 1,000 to 1 shot, the Bodhisattva still does it. The Bodhisattva doesn't need the outcome to be a certain way in order to continue. That means the Bodhisattva spends no time lamenting about what cannot be.
No. Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, maybe one more comment? Yes?
Yes. Can you explain why idle chatter is a bad thing?
Idle chatter, sometimes it's fine, sometimes it's fun, and it helps us to relax. But, we have right speech as part of the Eightfold Path, and one of the big components of right speech is not engaging in idle chatter. I think idle chatter can be harmful if we're not careful, because it can merge into gossip or saying bad things about people, or just sort of saying things that are not helpful. Like if you've ever been with a group of people and one person kind of has a complaint and then another one does, and pretty soon everybody's spiraling down into despair. And idle chatter can take us really away from the moment and our task of being mindful. So in a retreat, we don't want idle chatter. We don't want talking at all, because we really want to get focused. We're not in retreat all the time. We're out there in the world, and some idle chatter is just fine and it's fun. But we can sense when it's getting to be sort of not helpful anymore.
So I guess what would be considered idle chatter? Like, what are some examples?
Let's see. I think not thinking too much before we speak, talking about others in ways that are not helpful, trying to identify things to talk about because they kind of give us a thrill, or they're a little titillating or something like that, rather than being constructive.
Okay, I guess I'm a little bit confused by what the idle means then. Because the way I understand
Yeah.
idle is like it's not useful.
Yeah, I'd say not constructive, not constructive. Idle chatter just kind of fritters away the time. You know, it's something to do to kind of keep us amused, but beyond that, it doesn't really help us very much, you know, so we feel like we've wasted our time.
Sure. Would you consider it a defilement or just something that's not a huge deal but better to avoid than not?
I would say the latter.
Okay.
I avoid words like defilement because they seem so judgmental, you know, and everyone engages in idle chatter, and sometimes it's great. So it is something to be aware of and to, limit and avoid at the appropriate times, I think. We're pretty forgiving with the precepts and the Eightfold Path, you know. They tend not to be absolutes. We use our own wisdom as to when to do stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I think we'll stop here and turn this over to our Doan.